Morning, everybody. As Sophie said, I'm Phil Blades, and I'm going to talk a little bit about our uncertain world and how planning might be engaged, might be used to help you work through that. I'd like to start with a story, and this story is about the last 30 years. 30 years ago, I was working for UBS, and we were doing a major technology refresh in our London headquarters in Liverpool Street. And I shan't tell you any detail about that, except to say that we had over 400 IT staff. All of our developments were done in-house, mainly in custom code. We had large amounts of technology, and it was all based on the first floor of the building in Liverpool Street. We didn't have any real internet connections at the time, and we certainly didn't allow anybody access from outside of the organization, and we didn't communicate using that technology or interfaces in that way. It was entirely proprietary and entirely closed. Now, moving forwards a little bit, 13 years ago, and I'm not sure if I still look the same as that. I probably do. My wife told me last night I still have that shirt, by the way. But 13 years ago, I was co-founder of a network and systems management company called Rivermuse, and I was speaking at a round table in Silicon Valley. And the round table was full of investment bankers from all around the world, a lot of Americans and Brits there. But I was talking about the idea that Rivermuse was an open source software company, and that the community would be developing the interfaces to manage devices on everyone's networks and systems. And I almost lost the audience entirely from the point of view of buy-in, because 13 years ago, they thought it was completely anathema that anybody would allow any code on any system that hadn't been developed by them and controlled by them. Excuse me. And it was a hard sell. And in fact, I had to divert off and talk about wine for about 5 minutes just to get them back on the page. But nonetheless, that was the way that we believed that the world was going. And let's move on to 3 years ago, where Lloyds Banking Group in the UK published their open source manifesto. And they have an entire policy of moving to the cloud to use, wherever possible, open source code for all of their banking requirements. So a massive transformation between 30 years ago and a few years ago in the mindset of investment banks, some of the most security conscious and nervous technology users in the world. I guess my key messages are: never say never, and always expect change. So let's move into some more recent history. I don't think anybody will be needing a reminder that we've just recovered or are recovering from a global pandemic, which effectively shut down the world and provided massive disruption to supply chains throughout. We also have a war in Europe. Who could have imagined such a thing in the modern time? We have massive disruptions. There are sanctions with global implications, and as we all know personally, an energy roller coaster, which is causing massive turmoil both in the commercial and private space. In the UK itself, we have absolute political turmoil, 3 prime ministers in 3 months, which is unprecedented, and an unprecedented market backlash to a mini budget created by one of those prime ministers, and ongoing political fiscal corrections, which I dare say we'll learn more about today when the Chancellor speaks in the Houses of Parliament. We seem to be in a boom. Well, boom or bust has become boom and bust, and there are some very interesting examples more over the last few days. But Made.com was a great success during the lockdown, selling furniture and household goods all over the internet, have now declared bankruptcy, and Next have bought the assets, as in the brand name and the internet website, for 3.4 million, and that's only 1 year after a 775 million pound valuation for that company. Also, very topically, FTX crypto exchange has effectively evaporated. They were the poster child for what they call new money, with tens of billions in so-called assets disappearing entirely. They filed for bankruptcy, and I have to say investors have little to no hope of seeing any funds returned. So my key messages there are actually the opening story spans 30 years, but the current upheavals are all in the past 3 years. So the pace of change is accelerating exponentially, and always, frankly, expect the unexpected. So let's bring that focus, that helicopter view, down a little bit from the macro position to the focus that we have today. And what I would say to you is that you should focus on what's the most important. In these uncertain times, know what your path is. So ensure you have a budget, ensure you have a plan, and ensure you know what your outcomes, your desired outcomes are. Ask the question all the time, what does this mean for my business? How do I stay relevant with this or that change and or impact? And how do I increase my agility? And by agility in this case, how are you going to stay flexible, adaptable? How are you going to move at the speed the market is changing? And how do you make money, sustain cash flow, make profit, delete as appropriate? How do you retain staff? How do you fulfill your order book? How do you maintain X? So the key messages there are stay relevant and do not be complacent. So let's step down again into the detail. So digital transformation enables that agility that you need. Strategic planning sets the framework for the agility that you need. And I have a little acronym to keep me going, which is the 3 T's, to help me contextualize an approach to how you should set off. So traction, technique, and tools. And you can see here a few examples of what I mean by traction. Have you got clear executive support for your initiatives? Have you got a clear collaboration? Do you know how to prioritize that and how you can align it to your business? In the techniques category, what is your process? What is your approach? What is the team? What's the track record? How do you bring best practice and apply that technique? And how do you create the plan? And what is the plan? And for tools, of course, you have to know what software you're going to use, how your infrastructure is set, and how you will connect and the connectivity you need to drive those tools. And again, key messages in this uncertain world, choose your partners very carefully. And by choosing, I mean assess their expertise, look at their track record, look at the contextuality to your business experience, their experience against your business. How long have they been in business? Are they adaptable to what you need to do? And quite frankly, do they fit? Is their culture the same as your culture? Will they actually apply their knowledge with the right cadence for your organization? Some key aspects to consider as I gallop through these slides. Accurate data is absolutely essential, as is timely data. Do not underestimate the accuracy required, but also if it's accurate but late, it's a big problem. So accuracy and timely data, quite essential. Ensure that you've got clarity on your costs and constraints, and that's both an internal and an external driver. And that means your interfaces are very important when you're feeding into your plan. Scenario planning becomes essential, as we've talked about. Things can change very, very quickly in the modern world. And your planning time horizons have to incorporate that industry pace. Now, it's probably a 3 to 5 year horizon, but you must also allow for frequent course corrections. Do not be, don't think that once you've made your planning, you should leave it. That's exactly where we've just talked about some problems that have occurred. I will say to you, collaboration and teamwork are absolutely your friend. There are some pieces of good news on the horizon. The first one is that you're not alone. And I should say to you that COTS is commercial off-the-shelf software, has come of age. 30 years ago, off-the-shelf software really didn't work, really didn't do what I needed to do in my organization. And the good news is that now it is working, it does what you need, and needs very little in the way of modification. The same with cloud solutions. They bring massive benefits compared to where we were some time ago in my organizations and in my experiences. So the good news is that works on day one. It can evolve with your needs, so it can scale up, they can cope with complexity, and doesn't have to do all that on day one. And starting costs can be contained. It's also good news that the experts you need to get you started exist, whether that be project specific or just practitioners who have got the t-shirt of what you need to learn or how you need to get there. And best practice can be adapted to your needs. That's my quick romp through where we are and where you might need to go. I'd like to hand back to Ed Graham, who can talk about how GKEPM might get you out of the starting blocks. And I would say to you, remember, the elephant doesn't need to be eaten all at once.